Welcome again to another wonderful Sunday meeting. We are exploring Lojong, or the 7 points of mind training, and we are at slogan number 18. Before we start, we'll do our opening prayers. Then I'll give a Dharma talk on that slogan, and then there'll be time for discussion. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. As earth and the other elements, together with space, eternally provide sustenance in many ways for countless sentient beings, so may I become sustenance in every way for sentient beings to the limits of space until all have attained nirvana. As the Sugatas of old gave birth to bodhicitta and progressively established themselves in the training of a bodhisattva, so I too, for the benefit of beings, shall give birth to that bodhicitta and progressively train myself in that discipline. At this moment, my life has become fruitful. I have realized my human life. Today, I am born into the family of the Buddhas. Now I'm a child of the Buddhas. From now on, I will forthrightly perform the actions befitting my family. I will act so as not to degrade the faultlessness and discipline of my family. Just as with a blind man finding a jewel in a heap of dust, thus somehow bodhicitta has been born in me. This is the supreme Amrita which destroys death, the inexhaustible treasure which removes the world's poverty. It is the supreme medicine which cures the world's sickness, the tree which provides rest for beings weary of wandering on the paths of existence. It is the universal bridge on which all travelers may pass over the lower realms, the rising moon of mind which dispels the torment of the kleshas. It is the great sun which puts an end to the obscurity of ignorance, the pure butter which comes of churning the milk of the holy Dharma. For travelers wandering the paths of existence, seeking happiness from objects of enjoyment, it is supreme bliss near at hand, the great feast which satisfies sentient beings. Today, witnessed by all the protectors, I have welcomed the sentient beings and Sugatas, Devas, and Asuras rejoice. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So this morning, we're still on the 5 strengths, but now it's how to use the 5 strengths at the time of death. So I'm going to put this slogan into the chat room box so that you can have the whole slogan. This Mahayana instruction for the ejection of consciousness at death is the 5 strengths. How you conduct yourself is important. When you are dying, practice the 5 strengths. And then I added strong determination, familiarization, the positive seed, reproach, and aspiration, which we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks, I think. So in the Tibetan system, they're fairly elaborate instructions for the time of death, but I'm going to approach it from the perspective of a general understanding of death, as well as some of the aspects that are unique to the Tibetan system. So this is a quote from Pema Chodron's book, and she's quoting Suzuki Roshi. She said, it's not complicated. Suzuki Roshi said, just be willing to die over and over. As each breath goes out, let it be the end of that moment and the birth of something new. And then Pema adds, all those thoughts, as they come up, just see them and let them go. Let the whole storyline die in space for something new to arise. The 5 strengths address how we give up trying all the time to grasp what's ungraspable and actually relax into the space that's there. Then what we find, maybe that's the point. But we're afraid to find out. So I was fortunate in my 40s to do a fair amount of hospice work. I was intrigued about what happens in death for most of my life. And in my 40s, I had the opportunity to work at a hospice while I was on sabbatical from my teaching job, and then to continue working as a hospice volunteer, particularly creating art programs. And the reason I became so captivated by that work was seeing at this hospice in Connecticut that at the time of death, people actually relaxed in many ways. So things that they were afraid of, things that they were hesitant about, trying something new, they didn't have to hold up anything anymore. They didn't have to hold up old assumptions of who they were. They didn't have to mask in their interactions with me and the other caregivers. And so at that particular hospice, they had concerts, I think 5 days a week. And on any given day, a third of the people, we could roll their beds into a big hall. And you know, if you never liked classical music, no problem, I'll try it. If you never liked bluegrass, oh, sure, I'd like to try it. So there was this sense of, in my understanding, of a freshness in perspective that came when you knew death was near. And as an artist, I would work at bedsides and I would watch people be open to trying new ideas, new skills. And at the same time, I could see that what we were facilitating through the arts process was another way to relate to their families and to have the conversations, the healing conversations that they wanted to have. And especially in this period of our culture where people seem so afraid of end of life, afraid that it's going to be painful, afraid that the pain's going to be unbearable, it's cautionary to witness the extraordinary amount of growth that can happen in, for instance, in the last 3 days, in the last week, in the last 2 weeks. So one of the people that really struck me was a woman in, I think she was probably in her mid-30s, early 40s, who was dying of AIDS. She had been a drug user and of course had a very complicated life, and she had been admitted to the hospice from the streets. And they must have given her some sort of medication to help with the addiction, but in the last period of her life, and fortunately for her, it was several months, for her, the hospice was the best situation she had ever had. She had always wanted to be an artist, and she started getting appreciation for her drawings. She became quite generous. So instead of someone who had tricked people and robbed people to get drug money, she was making t-shirts for all of the caregivers, for her family. She actually healed to a degree the relationships in her family. And probably what was most wonderful to observe was it's not only that she got confidence, she began to see her self-worth, that she was a lovable person who could love. So she got closer to her true nature in that last period of her life than the whole rest of the, the troubled, I don't know when she became addicted, but decades of her life. And so that one phrase, how you conduct yourself is important, is really quite meaningful when we think of the time of death. And of course, she was conscious. I also witnessed people doing some of that work when they were in states that were, I don't know what you would call them, when they had delusions and they weren't relating at a rationally understandable level, and yet we could see they were doing the work they needed to do. Like someone who had lived as a hermit, they told me that they thought he had been a spy. And so he was completely isolated. His landlady said that he never spoke to anyone. He was always alone. And in the last days in his delusions, he was continually reaching out, saying, hug me, hug me, hug me, trying to hug people and hugging people. So this period is quite important. And then how do we apply the 5 strengths to this? So the determination is, the strong determination is to first stick to what is the main point of the Dharma. The main point is relative and ultimate bodhicitta. So relaxing, letting things go, letting our self-absorption go, so that we are facing each and every being with love and holding as close as we can the sense of non-duality and non-separation, the opposite of self-absorption. And this is no small thing at the time of death, when physically we are feeling all kinds of degrees of ailments, not feeling well the way we knew that was, and we know that, some of our family members who are in pain can be more irritable. So we'll see that irritability arising and seeing how, oh my goodness, this is actually self-absorption. I am still capable of loving, of offering love, of holding bodhicitta. And I'm still capable of seeing that all of my experiences at this moment are being experienced by millions all around the world, sentient beings in all kinds of situations, and having gratitude for the care and love and medicine that we're able to receive in this culture, in this country. So it's the strong determination to be tied to bodhicitta unwaveringly, no matter what is arising, no matter what stage of our physical dissolution is arising, to hold to that bodhicitta. Then familiarization, all the range of teachings that support the strength and the transition. We no longer are going to go see that wonderful teacher who's going to make us feel so inspired again. We're not going to go on 3-year retreat. Death is 2 weeks away. So using that time to the very best way we can. What are the teachings that inspired us most in life? It may have been, Shanti Deva that we were studying previously, and just seeing, oh, I can't do a lot lying in bed, but I can make offerings continuously. I can think of Tara continuously. I can see each and every one who comes to my bedside as Tara, or as a suffering being just like me. So using all of the teachings and practices to support as we move and change in that transition. And then in terms of those folks who are working with some of the esoteric teachings of Buddhism, really seeing, oh, I see my body changing, my feet are getting cold. That means the earth element is dissolving into space. The dryness of the mouth, that means the water element is dissolving into its nature. And being aware of the stages of dissolution in the Tibetan system at the moment of death, just like at the moment of falling asleep, but even more important at the moment of death, there is an open moment where we have the opportunity to see directly our true nature. So if we can stay present during those stages, we see that moment and meet our true nature. And in meeting the true nature, essentially liberate ourselves from samsara. Or as the karma is propelling us swiftly, then what are the teachings that say birth, death, the bardo, the next life are not separate things, they're a continuum. So how to really understand that this dynamic awareness is a thread through all of these subsequent lives, to stay confident about Buddha nature, stay confident in the Dharma, and not let fear arise. Or to investigate. Another thing we can do with familiarization is work with the teachings that ask us to investigate, this is the moment of death. Who is dying? Can we see the emptiness of that illusory self that we've created right in this moment? So there's ranges and ranges of ways to work with the familiarization of the teachings and putting them into practice right in this very moment as death comes. Then the positive seeds, using the transition of death, the time of death approaching, as just finally we can offer everything. We hold on to so much. But all of a sudden we can look around and say, I can't hold on to any of this. So it frees us up to make offerings. And making offerings is a wonderful practice. And the main advice is to make offerings to where it will do the most good. So as Buddhists, we think of making offerings to the teacher, to the three jewels, knowing that we're supporting the teachings, the Dharma, reaching more and more people, and how wonderful it is that everyone can have the Dharma. And we can see how all these objects that seem so precious to us, how many friends would benefit from these objects? How can we no longer have the stickiness of wanting to hold on? I'm looking at the beautiful Dharma poster on my wall, and in front of me I have the Heart Sutra in calligraphy. Of course, these are the nunneries, so it stays with the nunnery. But in my room, I have personal Dharma objects. How wonderful it would be no longer to feel like, oh, I'm going to have to hold on to these, to just freely give everything. So that positive seed of making offerings with the aspiration, may I always be connected to the teacher, may I always be connected to the Dharma in life after life. May I truly hold on to bodhicitta by the merit of this offering, or by the joy and habit of this offering. The fourth strength, reproach. And again, remember, we're aware of this English word, but we're thinking of the quality of reminder. Not forgetting. We have that beautiful prayer that we started the practice with this morning that says, now and until the time of my death, may I practice bodhicitta. So noticing over and over again, the moment we start to forget to hold on to bodhicitta, the moment we slide into self-absorption, not wanting to give away that painting yet, not wanting to share that wonderful Dharma book, whatever we're attached to, and say, oh, ego, I see you. You're trying to hold on to this. Oh, I think I'm going to call up and complain about this and complain about that. Oh, ego, I see you. I'm going to, I only have from now to the time of my death, but I'm going to use this time to really see every time I slide over to that self-absorption. And instead of complaining in this moment to the nurse, complaining in this moment to friends, honey, how are you? What can I do for you today? How can I make you happier today? And then aspiration. The aspiration of using this whole process to benefit self and others, to use the moment of pain to practice Tonglen, how you continuously use every single second. May I and all beings gain wisdom. May I and all beings be free from suffering. However it is that is an aspiration that you understand and can sincerely hold deep in your heart. May I moment to moment use my last moments to be in the mind of bodhicitta. That's really all we need. I want to conclude this morning with a memory of an old friend's death. She was a mentor to me. Her name was Louise. And her death was such an incredible teaching. She was someone who had extraordinary bodhicitta, did extraordinary things with her life. I know I've talked about her before. She was the one who went to hereditary conflict areas, trauma areas, where the worst, longest wars had been going, to teach peace. But as her death approached, essentially, she approached it with, how can I make it easiest for everybody? How can I use every trip to the doctor as a way to invite someone to come and have um, time with me so I can love them, so I can hear what's going on with them, so I can still help them. Every single trip to the doctor was precious. And believe me, people were lining up at her door to help her because her bodhicitta was so profound that the simplest thing was wonderful to do with her. And then to see the relationships with the caregivers from the time at the nursing home until and through the time at her death, see how the nurses wanted to come into her room and wanted to touch base with her because she was so appreciative and loving in the same way as she was to her closest friends. She was to the nurses and to the caregivers. And then she created a way to create a legacy for her teachings. She allowed people to come in and film her during her last couple of weeks, connecting with some class on death and dying at the local university, just every way she could help people. And then what was interesting was this is what her mind was like. Her death was hard. Her death was very painful, excruciating. It's something that, you wouldn't wish for anyone to be experiencing, but her mind was firmly in bodhicitta. Occasionally she would get scared when she would hear, what the likely next step was, but she never wavered from bodhicitta and how she related to all the people around her. So she used every second of that time, even the most difficult parts of it, to maintain bodhicitta. So her aspiration, in her next life, she expressed the aspiration to become a planet. So her aspiration, she wasn't actually Buddhist. Her aspiration was from her spiritual tradition, which saw Mother Earth as the greatest sentient being, always supporting the life of the planet and all the individual lives of all, from insects to humans. And she wanted to have that bounty of support. And that was her aspirations. And each and every one of us will make an aspiration that is the biggest that we can go, the biggest our heart can go, holding that on mind in our minds. So it's not something at all to be feared. It's more another stage of life to be explored and to be met with the glorious support of the Dharma, with a fearlessness that this is a new way for me to learn and grow in every moment, and a confidence that we're capable of that. Of course, we will need support, and this is the jewel of the Sangha around us, letting us have the support to use this time to be the moment of recognition, the moment that if we haven't recognized yet, that we still have the potential to recognize our true nature and nature of mind. So let's take this slogan into meditation. We can go into meditation for about 10 minutes and then open discussion. And as we're coming back as a group, I invite you to think a minute about what your aspiration might be. We don't know when death is going to arise for us. We may not have the luxury of, a 2-week diagnosis. So what is your aspiration now that you would hold right up to the moment of your death? And go ahead and, if you'd like to, put that in the chat box. And we'll close the live Facebook now. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise, where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I'm also stopping the recording, so our discussion is